In this video, I'd like to start to model a recognizable form. We're going to model a bird. And to use some reference images, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have my project set to my project folder, and also make sure that I have in my project folder all those project windows set. And then in the source images folder, I'm going to drop any reference images that I have here. Now back in Maya, let me go ahead and save this scene, and I'm saving it as bird model. The first thing I'm going to do is create a free image plane, and this will allow me to import those reference images to use to model from. So with this image plane selected, I can go to my attribute editor, and with this selected under image name, and when I click on this icon to insert an image, it automatically will pull it from my source images folder. So these are the three photographs I have that I can use to model from. And I think I'm going to choose this one because when I'm modeling something that I want to eventually animate, I want all of its body parts kind of extended out so that I'm able to then have all of the geometry to use to then deform. I also like this image because the beak is open and that might be helpful, but to model this within this shape, I won't ever be able to then outstretch the wings. I'm able to collapse these wings to the body if it's modeled like this, but I'm not able to stretch these wings out. So I'm going to go ahead and open this as my image plane. I'm going to move this back from the center of the scene. Let me also, since I am going to be utilizing this portion of the image, I'm just pressing spacebar here to toggle between the different viewports. So using this quad display, I'm then going to hover my mouse over this front view, and I'm just going to kind of align this part of the image with the center of, and in the center of the body with the center of the grid. And even though it's moved back, I'm going to still work in this front view here and start to add some material to then build into this model. So I'm going to start with a cube, and then I'm going to rotate the cube to orient it and I'm using this front view in order to really be able to align it as I'm getting started. And I might toggle back and forth between the perspective view or kind of leave this open so I can see both views, both the front view and the perspective view. I can also do these dual views, so I have the front view and the perspective view. If your front isn't the one popping up with the perspective, you can then change the view by going to panels here and saying orthographic views, side, top, or front. And then this one you can leave as the perspective. So rather than having the 4, I'm just going to use 2. I'm going to zoom in here. And then I'm going to maybe extrude some more material out of this face. And perhaps scale and rotate it. Maybe move. And the tool settings here, I might want to change my axis orientation to component so that I'm orienting my move to be able to do something like that. I'm going to hit extrude again and pull out more material and taper it and perhaps rotate it a bit more. And let's do the same thing with the back. Select this, extrude, pull out some tail material, scale that down a bit, maybe scale it, get flat. Let's move this back up a bit and extrude again. Extrude, kind of rotate. And this is where, in this view, it looks okay. In the front view, it looks like it needs to be modified, what I'm doing. So make sure that I'm pulling this in. Now I might go to edge and double click on this edge to select this edge loop and also pull that edge loop more into place. I might double click and select this edge loop and rotate it a bit. Same thing with this edge or this face here. Let me rotate the face and move it. I think I want to rotate this edge as well. I really want to look at what's going on here. So this makes sense to me because I'll eventually extrude the legs from here, so having these divisions for now placed in these locations where some of the major changes to the model occur. This will allow you to maintain good topology to the model. And let's select this bottom face. Let's extrude a bit more material here and make sure I'm extruding in the right direction. Extrude down, move, and rotate. And, at this point, I might scale this down quite a bit. Let me double click this edge loop. And I'm going to change the axis orientation. I can already tell sometimes working in component orientation makes the most sense for whatever the operation is. Sometimes working in worldview makes the most sense. Scale that down, rotate it a bit. Okay. This is a pretty decent start to my model, although you can see that I do have an issue here with how I've been extruding that tail or extruding some of these features. It's not symmetrical. And if I go to turn symmetry on over object Z or object X, it's not going to maintain that symmetry. So something was off when I was extruding these. So let me go back and see. And I think it happened really pretty much right at the beginning, and it's when I'm rotating. So I just really want to make sure that when I'm extruding these forms that I'm working with my, that this orientation is correct. When I'm rotating, that I'm not rotating in any other direction than over the Y. And this is important because I do want to maintain symmetry here for my object. Let me see. So that when I select an edge on one side, I can work with symmetry when I'm trying to perform symmetrical operations. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of redo that work that I already had done. And let's extrude again. So something like this. And then what I can do is change some of the edges. So double click this edge. So it looks good from this view, but I just want to make sure that while I'm performing those operations, that I'm also able to maintain the symmetry here. So I can, with that symmetry turned on, and turn this on to the object aspect or axis orientation. I just want to make sure when I'm rotating these parts or moving them, that I am moving them only along those particular axes. This I might want to pull up a bit. And now let's work on the head a little bit more with symmetry turned on. Just going to try to orient the head. and extrude again in a beak. And I'm going to use this edge loop tool and just stick some edges kind of in the center to add more definition to be able to then build out more of my model. I'm also going to stick an edge loop around the center in both directions so that I'm able to, and working with symmetry, and let me select this edge, this side of edges. Working with symmetry, if I use the move tool to move this set of edges, it will move the opposite set of edges in the other direction. So, and if, let's see, if I change this, I think I'm going to have to do this for the top, maybe not with symmetry, but rather just using vertex mode and making sure I'm in world might be the easiest way to start to move these vertices into place. So as I'm moving them, I am thinking about the way that they generate edges around the model so that I have what is called like good topology. I might want to pull this center piece out as a beak. What will eventually maybe become a beak. And this is tedious. And so I think just watching this and watching this process will be helpful for you to then go and begin to manipulate your own models. But just in adding those two edge loops around the kind of midsection in both directions, then I'm able to pull that out and kind of have this front beak-like form. Now the head is looking a little bit crazy, so I'm going to go in eventually and start to manipulate the scale of some of those loops. But first, let me pull out material here. And again, always having that symmetry turned on, so that whatever I'm doing to one side, I'll also do to the other. Now it does look like I have overlapping vertices here. So I must have extruded an additional time, right? You can see that I accidentally extruded faces on top of each other. Which is a big no-no. So I might want to use the target weld tool to fix this issue. This is one of the uses of the target weld, is when you have vertices that are overlapping, we can just delete them. We can merge them together. And I think that was all of those faces that were overlapping. I'm just going to go around and double check it. Another part of the modeling process is to modify errors that occur in the modeling, because we really want to just have one. Oh, and see, this is an issue. I'm target welded those together. Let me undo that, because this side I'm going to turn off symmetry for a moment. And let's target weld this down and turn off symmetry. Just target weld those two. Let's turn back on symmetry. Okay, and I do believe that I have fixed that problem. And sometimes this happens, right, when I'm trying to select multiple components using the translate tool, and it gives me this like hotkey extrude, which I don't find very useful. I find that to actually make a lot more trouble than it's worth, where we have a lot of overlapping features. And this might be a good time to turn on our transform constraint of our surface slide and change the axis orientation to component, so that I am just changing the position of these vertices rather than really deforming the shape of what I've made. And turn that back off if I want to start to modify the actual shape again. Turn it on if I want to maintain its shape. And then I can turn it off if I want to pull vertices out. So at this point, I may want to want to find where I'm going to be extruding that wing from. I might want to designate that at this point. So I have here, I can see that this wing, these feathers here are gonna attach somewhere else. So I have something that is maybe a little bit thinner than what I have here already. What I'm gonna do actually is add another edge loop. So let me double, and this looks like okay, because this started off as a square, it's not seeing these as edge loops. So let me just double click this whole loop, and I'm going to maybe have to do it one at a time and kind of move these up a bit. I might want to actually keep that as a surface slide, right? Seems like I have one more overlapping vertice there to target weld together. So let me go in and select this. Let's surface slide that up the model, so I maintain its shape. Okay. And let's see about this one. This might also have some kind of overlapping thing going on. No, that's just one single point. Okay, so I have the kind of head and part of where the shoulder is going to be, I'm putting in now. And let's add another loop of edges here. And the edge loop tool, a target weld is my last one. Whatever your last tool that you used, it will appear as this icon here. So again, go to Mesh Tools, Insert Edge Loop. I'm going to insert one right there. And I'm gonna, again, everything about this is just really fine tuning individual components. I'm gonna see where I want to put that wing. And I think I would like to build that wing out. I'm gonna need another edge loop here. So if I go to my edge loop tool, and because I have symmetry turned on, I will add an edge loop on both sides Okay, and we still must have something going on here. Let's multi-cut. There is still some overlapping stuff happening here, which is a bummer. I can kind of tell. Let me turn off symmetry for a second. Sometimes if you kind of use this tool right in place, it will know what to do with it. Let's go back to symmetry on. Okay. All right. So now I kind of have where, let's double click this edge. And let's use scale, component. See if we can find a good orientation to scale it from. Maybe object, scale this out a bit. You know, it's not going to be perfect on this side. It doesn't really maintain its roundness, so you'll have to go in and kind of manually adjust those edges or those vertices. You know, I do think that a lot of these faces or these vertices here get Q, so I'm not selecting anything in a weird way. And let me go ahead and move these back. And then for these ones, let me to object. So let's go ahead and extrude where the wings will be. And I think maybe move this up. Let's extrude the wing right here from this face. And it will do it from both sides since we have symmetry. Although I see more of this. Okay. And go to extrude. Let's pull this out and pull out the wings. Also scale them. And then let's move some of the components into place here. So I think I'm going to use this image to give a rough estimate of how I want these wings to deform, but I might not want them all the way up and back. I kind of want them out. I'm going to go ahead and create another image plane. And let's add one of my other images here. Perhaps this one will be helpful. And I might want to rotate this image plane. I can also plug in its rotation values here. It has more channels than some of the others, but let's see if I can't select this image plane and rotate it just 90, perfectly 90. And let's just move it back here so I can look at it. So I can see it, how maybe those wings look like stretched out. Looks like I'm going to need another edge loop along this part of the body. I'm adding too many. Maybe at this point I'll add some more and then just go in and go make sure I'm working in my component mode. I do like to manipulate vertices. I do prefer that. So let me work with individual vertices to model and move them into place. And again, this is what I'm talking about with topology, that along the edge of this wing, we have kind of equally spaced and maintained squares or quads. I may want to do something like soft selection here. Potentially, you could try that. But I think sometimes just modeling with just some simple tools, just using translate, changing the orientation of that pivot. Okay. And then again, like this is maybe not great topology. I might want to move some of these vertices down and spread them out along the body. Another thing that's useful is if I have my model selected here, and right now you'll see it in it's just in its regular shaded mode, but we can kind of preview what a smooth shading will do to this model by hitting 3 on our keyboard. Right now we're in 1. Let's go to the I don't know if we can access it here. But 1 on your keyboard is like the faceted what the model actually looks like. 2 gives you what the model actually looks like with the smooth preview turned on, and then 3 is what it looks like with smooth on. So we will eventually smooth this model so you can kind of see what the shape of it's already starting to look like, but it's starting to kind of develop into this bird form. Let's go back to the object mode here and turn back on this regular. Now, when you see smooth, this looks a little bit funny, and that's because we need to go into these edges here, these vertices, and kind of give some more roundness to this shape. Same thing with the center edge. Make sure I'm using Q because that's how I got into that problem before that I had to fix with using the multi-color, using the target weld to fix it. So I'm going to go back to my modeling toolkit and turn back on surface light here for a moment to again start to maintain the shape here that I already have, but change the topology so that we have nice loops of edges and faces and vertices. And I'm going to always turn that off when I want to make some major changes to the overall shape. Now the face looks like it wants some roundness. It wants kind of a loop of edges around where the beak will be. So I'm gonna start to change this form a bit, and let me go back to turning this off. And at this point, I might want to use my multi-cut to cut some more definition into this beak area. And it's okay if I have some triangles rather than quads, rather than squares. Although this looks like a tri, but it's still actually some quads. So I may want to do some multi-cut around this as well. Now this is where we can start to really define the flow of this model. And I kind of want to have a top and a bottom beak here, because if I do want to animate those as two separate components, then I'm going to have that line in between them. And I'll show you that a little bit later. So sliding these two together isn't going to work. I'm going to have to do a slide for each one along this edge. It's kind of separately. It gets a little tricky when you have these corners to slide them in, but I do want to have a bit more of a thinner wing. Now this is where I might want to use, actually soft selection might be really helpful. But I don't really have actually that much. I might want to actually just select all of these faces, just going to face mode and dragging a marquee around them, working back in world view here, and let's turn off this. Let's just extend that wingspan and scale it out a bit. Okay, let's do the feet. Again, I have a kind of nice separation of where the feet could go, which is right here. Kind of looks like it comes out from that part of the body, or I could choose maybe these faces. Let me just maybe orient them a little bit. And I've selected, I only want to select this face. So let's see. Let's use surface slide while I'm fixing these two quads here where I want them. They might even be the wrong ones. Looking at this model, it looks like the feet come out right where the tail, right where that division for the tail is. So let's add another edge loop here, and then let's select these two faces. And even in that edge loop, that's good because we have the body now has some nice topology. I would say this backbone looks a little bit protruding. Anyhow, let me go ahead and select these two edges. Let's hit extrude and pull out some feet. And to make those, let's see. An off surface. Now to pull out those kind of to add really definition to these feet and all of those toes and things. Now, what I might recommend is to add another edge loop. and in this case, do a relative distance. And that's just changing the edge loop tool settings here. And now from here, I might select face mode. Make sure I'm selecting, have my select, and then let's scale this down a bit. And then maybe from this face, let's go back to face mode. Select this face, extrude a toe, select this face, extrude a toe, select this face, extrude a toe, and maybe the back face too, I think. And now I'm going to go ahead and kind of manipulate these vertices so they're in a better position. I may even want to resolve all of those in a point. But I do think, let's see, let's select these two. I'm just going to do one at a time, kind of move them. Let's move them out also. I can do that with the face, might be easier to move the face out. So I start to have, like, I'm starting to have some toes here to work with, some legs. You know, I might actually want all of these edges a little bit thinner. Let me select all of these edges. I'm going to hit 4 to make sure I didn't select anything other than the legs. Go back to 5 to shaded mode. Let's just scale those down. And if I work in component, right, I can maintain, I can kind of scale them in just, and let's see, is it scaling anything? Not really. Yeah, this works better. Kind of scale it this way. And sometimes these tools are like pretty imperfect. And this is where it starts to get kind of, we're working with little minute kind of details here. I can work on that for a while, but this gives you a bit of an overview of the entire modeling process. Let's go back to our object mode here. Let's do a preview of the shaded mode. I think that looks pretty good. I don't love how this is resolving here. I do think I need to cut another edge here. And I'm just going to use my multi-cut tool to cut an edge loop all the way around there. And this edge loop looks a little strange. I might also do a little cut here. And now I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to do the same with the top of this beak. I'm going to cut another edge here and make a try there. And that just, and then let's also cut a point. Let's do the same thing here. Let's cut a point. Okay, now I have something that looks a little better to me. I may want to manipulate some of these quads in here, but turn back on surface slide. For this beak, I may want to target weld these two together. And again, this is hard to tell if that was a good move or not. I think we'll kind of leave it like that as our resolution of our beak. Now, in looking at this object compared to the image plane, I might look at it here and really modify. I mean, the scale of some of these edge loops is really off. Let's turn off symmetry at this point. Let's scale some of these down. And to just, this bird is a little bit too plump. So I'll just kind of use the scale. This also, you know, I'm going to need another division in here, really. And I will want to use surface slide to slide some of those around. Let me address the, that's vertex face. I never use that. Just kind of splits the model apart. Make sure I'm working with my transform tools only. I'm just going to move these vertices kind of down so the back isn't protruding as much as it is. And then I'm going to use the surface slide again and start to try to position these vertices a little bit better around the model. So that again, for that good edge flow, we have faces that have relative. And in doing that, this is kind of problematic that I've slid those the way that I have. So what I'll want to do is go to select, click select this, go to Q, double select this loop of vertices. And let's try to align them with the scale tool. Let's see if that aligned it in the center of the body. And we'll only know that by looking at the side view. Let's snap to point here. Let's snap to grid. And let's try to move all of these vertices to the center of the grid. So hopefully that fixed. Oh, let me make sure I'm looking at the front and the perspective view again. And I think in turning off symmetry, at this point, what I can do is if I have a model that isn't symmetrical, and I can undo some of the things I've done, but by clicking and selecting and not having symmetry turned on, I kind of have a bit of an issue now using it. Right now, these two are no longer aligned. So let's see, I can go back and let's go back and go back to when this model was in a good spot. This is actually and it might have been too long ago. So I'm gonna just redo what I've done on this model. Okay, so I do have an issue here because of something that I've done with the model. So what I'll do is I'll go to object mode or I'll go to face mode. And let's go to the side view, quad view here, and let's go to side view. And let's select the faces And this is, see where we can see where this issue is. Let's like move this vertex and snap it to the grid in this direction. So let's see if we can hit 4 here and make sure all of these vertices that are in the center are actually in the center. And I think I like this left side of the body better than the right. So let me select these faces on the left side of the body and hit delete. And going back to my perspective view, I only have 1/2 of my bird by selecting, dragging, and marquee selecting. But now what I can do is go to object mode and say edit mesh or mesh and mirror. And let's look at the mirror options here. So I want to mirror, and I do want to in fact mirror across the Z axis, but I want to mirror in the negative direction. Remember, this gizmo shows you the positive direction is indicated by which direction the line is pointing. Cut geometry, mirror axis position the world, combine with original. I'm going to say mirror. Okay, and now I have a symmetrical form again. And now I'm able to select components on opposite sides of this model. So let's see, I'm going to hit 3 here. And now what maybe I'll do to this model, because I think it's at a good place. Let me make sure my snapping functions are not turned on. This is a good place for me now. I would say for you, I would spend a lot more time modeling the feet, for example. But for this demo, I think I've gotten this into a decent spot. So what I'll do, although I did say that these vertices in the center here are not quite correct. And I just want to make sure that I'm only selecting the vertices that I want to manipulate and nothing else. And I do want to kind of move them down in the Y, and I don't want to mess with the Z direction. So anything I do, I'm just going to do in the Y and the X. And if I have this transform constraint on, I don't want to free form. I want to make sure that I'm sliding it along these axes. So I'm going to move that up a bit and move this down. And then what I'll do is I'll perform a smooth on the entire object. So I'm going to go here and hit smooth. Okay, and that's going to increase the divisions and it's going to add. So just to look at what this looks like, maybe I'll duplicate this model, move this one over, and hit smooth. It also might not be a bad idea that once you get your model to a particular place, always make sure you're saving, which I haven't done, which was very bad of me. I always want to save my work. That way I kind of maintain this low poly, and now I have this new smooth poly to work with to again go in and manipulate now. And now this might be a good opportunity to use something like soft selection and select this vertex. Now make sure that my fall off radius is small enough that when I start to turn off the surface slide thing, start to move some things around, maybe not this particular one, but for the wings, right? If I want to add more, I'll select this and start to really shape this a bit more. Now, when I did smooth it, I added quite a bit more divisions to my model, which is okay. But just know that that's what's happening. And we always want to maintain symmetry. That's going to be really important when you're modeling, but also when we get into rigging and animating. But with soft selection turned on here, and making this much smaller, now I can really start to form maybe really form the feet a bit more. Okay, I think this bird, although the last thing I want to do is really fix this beak area. The beak, um, let's go to surface slide here. Let's also turn this off. Because we didn't necessarily need to smooth, let's say, the point of the beak. That's not really as necessary as smoothing the entire model, but it's good to just do the operation of smooth across the whole model, because if you don't, then you will end up with five-sided faces, which you don't want. But now I might go in and maybe refine some of this a bit. Although this kind of looks okay, we might actually do a multi-cut. Okay, because we're starting to get some natural eye placement here, actually. When we're thinking about topology, we have kind of two places where maybe the eyes would potentially kind of go. Okay, and I'm going to just pull this vertex out. That might be too far. And I think I'll call this model done.